It's the clash. It's that clash of civilizations that is just so fascinating. I mean, because it's really amazing. It's the same story over and over again. And if you're any good, they won't notice. There's always that deep, dark place you got to go. You know, in the Goonies. You know, the cave, the pirates. There's always a deep, dark place. Yoda. I mean, there's always a deep, dark place that you got to go. It's the dark night of the soul in terms of the mystic journey. It's always the same story. And those heroic journeys are the ones that the Spanish make it out to be that way. And whereas the invading, people who are getting invaded probably don't feel the same way about the story. The Spanish, when they went in, would always take over the reins of government. And then they would start taxing at a rate that actually the people couldn't stand to have, okay? Because the Inca and the Aztec kind of knew, you know, how much they could get out of them without making them suffer to the point where they might rebel against you, right? And the Spanish just came in and just wiped them out and stuff like that. So the Inca were really well organized. I mean, it was a social, you know, there was plenty of food. Everybody had food. And they had storehouses of food along the road. It was kind of like a socialist government or something. But the only people allowed on the road are their army. And I mean, so you had that. There was a couple of Andean roads. One of them went up to Ecuador. That was where one of the emperors was. The emperor, they told that he had to fill a room this high with gold and twice this high with silver, fill a room with that stuff. And he did. And they killed him anyway. It really was the diseases that did more of the wiping out in some ways than anything else. Also, you need to get over Quetzalcoatl. They always had this idea that they were godlike figures, okay, when they first showed up. And I think the Spanish kind of, you know, encouraged this sort of idea. Cortez and Pizarro were both from the same misbegotten place in Spain that was poor and ratty and, I mean, just a really bad place in Spain was where they came from, okay? And that's, you know, and they didn't have anything to go back to. They had nothing, right? They come over here and get everything. And Pizarro picked up on what Cortez had done and did the same kind of stuff down there. The Inca, there's like 50 varieties of corn, 3,000 varieties of potato, and we get the russet. I mean, we didn't even get the good one. I mean, come on. They got potatoes that have more protein than soy in them. I mean, you can have, you know, a complete meal with just different varieties of potato. And they're not plain, I mean, potatoes are cool. And several, you know, but they have actual agricultural stations where they would make at different elevations for which elevation you'd use this type of seed and stuff. And the cleverest thing they did, the Incas did, was let you have a little wild stuff around the edge where, you know, some of your crop would grow up, and whenever you had a disease that afflicted one part of it, you go out and look around the edges to see what survived out there. That's the good stuff. A really smart way to do your crops. It's not just have one crop. One disease will wipe the whole thing off, right? But you've got varieties, and they have lots of varieties of stuff. How they did all that, we're not really quite sure, but they developed all these varieties. I mean, they're brilliant about that stuff. But the whole Milky Way goes back and forth like this. And they think of it as a canoe with stinking jaguar at the back, I think, and some crocodile guy in the middle, and there's, you know, and the Pleiades are, you know, they got different, their whole stories are different. Like we have the stories, they have a whole different set of stories that explain what goes on. But they mapped it really carefully. The Mayans had it really well mapped. Now the Aztecs were kind of reverting a little bit to a little barbarism. Their literary stance was not as high as the Mayans had been, so there was a degeneration there in a certain sense. They're really into the calendar. That's still kept by the shamans in Guatemala. They still have a sense of what the Mayan stuff is. People go, well, where did all the Mayans go? And the Mayans go, we're still here. They just sort of moved out of town because the town kind of basically fell apart. Plus, who wants to do that whole thing of, you know, oh yes, the king, and oh yeah, let's pull fingernails out of the other king and all that kind of stuff. But they still had people in Mexico, in the state of Chiapas, who had what they did was they would flatten the back of their heads and they were called long heads and stuff. For the aristocrats would have their heads like, you know, oddly shaped from how they were, their boards that they were on and stuff. I think they did that in the Northwest as well, but they were still doing that down when I was there. I met a couple of people that had that done to them.